Yeah, so it's Sunday. I wanted to go ahead and make this video because I kind of knew this was going to happen. I could tell that this was the way things were going, kind of leaning towards a lot of people were making comments on the news and stuff like that. So I needed to go ahead and make this video because I want to make something real clear. I mean, this is a news story I just found, okay? I had already had the intention of making this video, and then I went looking for the first news story that popped up about the attacks by Hamas on Israel. This is the first story that popped up. So I called it. I think you're going to see quite a lot of this because I like to call this the well, actually crowd. And they're going to show up and they're going to say, well, actually, if you know anything about history in the region, Israel, blah, 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 did this, blah, blah, blah. We're going to put this into perspective because if your first instinct was to say that this was a bad thing, the attack by Hamas on Israel, your first instinct was correct because Hamas is a terrorist organization. And what do terrorists do? What are they really good at? What have they done throughout history? Cause change using fear, right? How do you strike fear into people? Threaten them, threaten their lives, hurt them, hurt the people they know. Now, when I say people they know and their countrymen, I don't mean military members, okay? Terrorist organizations target civilians. And this is the part where people like the Democratic Socialist of America. If there's one thing we know for sure, it's that Democrats and socialists, which are basically kind of the same thing at this point, they are always on the wrong side of everything. They choose the wrong side of everything. Always wrong. This is no different. So the Democratic Socialist of America, they held a protest in solidarity with the Palestinians in New York City today. Even the intellectually challenged Governor Kathy Hochul blasted the rally as abhorrent and morally repugnant. She might live to regret calling them that because, these are her people. But the protest organized by the Democratic Socialist of America, a group that boasts 6 members of the U.S. House of Representatives, including members of the Squad. What a surprise. Ilhan Omar, anyone? And I mean, that's fine, right? Like, freedom of speech. You can say stupid things and you can do stupid things. You can be a morally repugnant person if you want to, as long as you're not breaking the law. But they're wrong. Straight up, 100% wrong. Why can I say that with absolute certainty? And I do say it with 100% absolute certainty. Here's why. They're going to say things like, well, the Israelis, they did X and they've done Y, and historical context, right? That's the new buzzword. That's the big buzzword going around for this whole situation. Historical context. When you're justifying a targeted attack on civilians, there is no justification for that. There just isn't. It doesn't matter what the government of Israel has done. It doesn't work like that because civilians are different from the government. Hamas has always targeted civilians. And by targeted, what do I mean by targeted? Well, let's use an analogy. Let's say that there is a murderer holed up in a house and he's shooting at police, that are outside. A good friend of that murderer is also in the house with the murderer. Is the good friend of the murderer in danger? Yeah. So what would the police try to do? They would try to tell the friend of the murderer, if they have not already left the house, that they should leave the house because this is combat. Even before that, you can still say that the friend of the murderer should have said, well, my friend's a murderer and the police are right outside and he's shooting at them. So they seem pretty mad and maybe I'm in a bad spot here. Maybe I should leave. And then you've got the police outside telling them, hey, you should leave. So after all that, after the person that knew, the murderer was a murderer in the house, and then the person was in the house when the police showed up, and then the police are telling the person to get away from the murder, and the person doesn't do it. When it comes time to engage and neutralize the threat, the friend of the murderer gets killed by accident. They were in the house, and the police had to neutralize the threat. Some of the rounds, say, went through a wall or whatever, got the friend's dead too. The police weren't aiming for the friend, they were aiming for the murderer. This person had enough information to know that maybe this is a bad situation, I should leave the house. That is a lot different from a police sniper targeting the friend of the murderer and just putting one right in their head, which obviously the police would not do. The police would not just kill the friend of the murderer just to hurt the murderer. You see where I'm going with this? To say that civilians have been killed by Israel, I'm sure they have. Israel has been laying down the hate in Gaza and will continue to do so. That's just the way it is, man. That's combat. They didn't start it, but they're going to finish it. Bet. They keep saying that the Israeli military has killed civilians in the past. That may be true. Israel may be guilty of war crimes. Targeting Israeli citizens? How does that fix it? How does that make it okay? Now, do two wrongs make a right? The answer is supposed to be no. Hamas, some of them did hit military targets. Some of them did. And if they had all consigned to hitting military targets, I mean, that's war, baby. Like it happens. They targeted civilians. See, there's a big difference between civilians being your mission, and your mission is to take down a building known to cover for Hamas terrorist members, and there just happens to be some civilians that refuse to leave. The building's going to come down. And in a lot of cases, Israel has warned, I mean, they can't warn them all, right? Like, this is war, okay? If you're in Gaza right now, you should be thinking, I should go somewhere else. I should seek shelter. I shouldn't stay in a building where I know there are probably Hamas fighters. I've seen them in the hallway, that kind of stuff. When you hear the Israeli prime minister, whatever he's called, Netanyahu, his position, I don't know what it is. When you hear him say, leave, that's intelligence, right? Like, that lets you know that the military is probably going to do something here. I should leave. This actually hurts Israel, because this tells Israel's enemies, the people they're really after, the Hamas members, the ranking guys or whatever, it tells them where they're going to hit. So it makes it almost impossible to get who they're after. But what they're trying to do right now is to destroy their resources. They're trying to limit their movements, take out all their bases and places that they have, so it'll make it easier to hunt them down. That's the idea. That's the objective. Israel's taken the long way around. Okay, they're expending expensive ordnance to take out these resources and give the enemy, the ones that they're really after, the chance to escape just to save civilians. If you're telling me that you can't see a difference between a country that does that ultimately hurts their mission just to try and avoid civilian casualties, versus one that their entire mission is to hurt and kill civilians, which is Hamas was doing, okay? They were walking around shooting women and children. There are videos of it. I've seen it. Kidnapping people. You're telling me that you can't see a difference between those two entities and what they're doing? Then I don't know what to tell you. Your idea of right and wrong is so screwed up that I can't even talk to you. That's all I know. Has Israel committed atrocities in the past against Palestine? I'm sure. But who committed the atrocities? Was it the women and children on the street? Was it the teenagers and the young adults inside the rave, where like hundreds of them were shot down, just gunned down? Was it them that did it? Because I highly doubt that. Hamas's quarrel is supposed to be with the Israeli government and the Israeli military. So women and children are what they go after. And you're telling me that's okay? History and the historical context justifies that? No, it does not. You are wrong 100%. Say it with me. Hamas is a terrorist organization. Hezbollah, which is now active, reportedly there fighting along with the Palestinians, they are a terrorist organization as well. State-sponsored terrorists, funded by Iran, which ultimately is funded by, guess who? The United States. We've sent Iran billions of dollars. So I wonder where Hamas and Hezbollah got 7,500 rocket artillery rounds. Those are not cheap, and they are not easy to get. That's an insane amount. Nobody could have imagined they had that many rounds. Where'd the money come from? Where'd Iran's money come from? How much have we sent them? And also, what happened to all the equipment we left in Afghanistan? The last reports were that it went to black market sales. You see, unfortunately, it seems as though, again, the United States might actually be the cause of this. Go figure. Kind of like that one time that we called, what's his name, Osama bin Laden, our friend, when the Soviets were in Afghanistan, and we gave him tons of Stinger missiles, tons of weapons to fight the Soviets. All of that aside, it just shows you where our own country, is at in the world and what we might be responsible for, and it's almost enough to make you not want to know it. And as far as the Democratic Socialist of America, I think you can expect more of this garbage in the coming week. That's why I wanted to make this video, because I could see the storm clouds forming, let's say. Terrorist organizations are criminal organizations the world over, period. Because what they do is morally repugnant. It's a good thing to keep in mind, because you're going to hear things when people are going to try to twist your beliefs in it and make you come to the conclusion that, well, I must not know everything, and the whole thing is terrible. The whole thing is terrible, okay? So you can sum it up by saying, well, there may not be a good guy in this fight. That's actually incorrect, because the enemy of the terrorists, according to the terrorist own actions, are the civilians. And I'd say the civilians are kind of the good guys here. Just remember that. It's important.